Facebook. You could be part of the discussion as we are looking at a very important issue, and this issue centers around the collapse of the national grid. And it's becoming incessant now. I think we're having the sixth one, the sixth collapse, and everyone is a little bothered now. What exactly is happening? I have in the house this morning to help us look at this issue very critically and quite unemotionally. And I'm glad to welcome to New Dawn this morning the Executive Director, Research and Advocacy, Association of National Electricity Distributors, Chief Sunday Oduton. I want to welcome you, sir, to New Dawn.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right. Moses, would you want to incessant grid collapse?
Yes. Many thanks for joining us once again. Now, let's start from the scratch, and there's no way we won't talk about the takeover of the power sector or the privatization in November 2013. Nigerians were happy. We thought it was Uhuru. Promises were made, 13,000 megawatts, but till now, we are still, it's not even up to 4,000 megawatts. And just like he said, I think the sixth one the sixth collapse was reported, happened, that was last week. And the cable had also reported that the grid experienced 206 collapses between 2010 and 2019. So, and this blame game has been on for some time. The Gencos, we blame Discos, Discos, we blame TCN. I mean, where does the problem lie? Is it that there's no political power, there's no political will for Nigerians to enjoy power?
Thank you very much. First of all, you started with the issue of the national grid, and of course you have linked that with privatization. The national grid is not privatized. The national grid is owned by the TCN. TCN means Transmission Company of Nigeria. In a layman's language, that's what you call the high tension cable. Two of them passes through this area. So when you talk about national grid, just remember government, remember NEPA, remember ECN. So if you can remember all of that, it should make sense. You also need to remember the value chain, because indeed there was privatization, which was flawed from the beginning, but I'll get to that. But you have to understand that electricity is a product, so we have a producer, we have a transporter, we have a distributor and retailer of electricity. It's also important for our viewers to also know that electricity cannot be stored. You can't store it, you can't keep it. As distributors, once they pass it to you, you have to distribute it to the public. Now, at the top of the value chain are the producers. We call them generation companies. There are 28 power plants that are working now in Nigeria. Out of 28, 25 of them depend on gas. We call them thermal power plants. Example, Egbi power plant. Another example, Olonjogo power plant in Papalanto, Ogun State. We also have 3 other power plants which depends on water. Their raw material is water. The other 25, raw material gas. The other 3, water. We have Kanji, Shiro, and Jeba power plant. All those 3 are situated within Niger State. And the only 3 power plants in the whole of northern Nigeria, as big as the Northeast, no other power plant. That means whatever you produce down south and in Niger State, you send it through the national grid all over the country, which means for me, you send electricity to Maiduguri, to Sokoto, Pinikabi, and of course, Ilorin and other places. So once there is a problem along that grid, then there will be a major hitch. So at the top, producers, generation company, like I said. Next is the transporter, Transmission Company of Nigeria. Their job is, like any other transporter, to wheel the power from the point of generation, that is the point of production, to the point of distribution. Below the value chain is the very industry and the body that everybody abuses, which is us, the discos. Why? Because we are the one that people know We're the one that get money from you. We're the one that give you bill. We're the one that are supposed to do this and that. But we're below the value chain. And what that simply means is that no matter how much or the quantum of electricity produced or about to be produced or potentially can be produced by the generation company, the producers, if the transporter cannot wield the power, then it will not get to the distributors. Simple analogy.
All right. I will still take you more on that analogy, but let me just welcome the former Chief Press Secretary to the Ogun State Government, Mr. Adegbero Adebanjo, who is also joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Adebanjo.
Good morning.
Now we're looking at this incessant national grid collapse. From your own take, from your own perspective, why is this so? You know, why do we as a nation, why do we constantly have to go through this rigor? Why?
What's happening is that we are treating electricity production the way we are treating political power, over centralization. Everything is over centralized. I see no reason why Ogun State shouldn't have the leave via the Constitution to produce its own power for the consumption of its people. The problem is that our power generation and distribution has not kept pace with development in the country and in other parts of the world. We are still treating power generation as the exclusive preserve of the federal government. Why do we have just one single power grid supplying power to the country of more than 200 million people? It is unworkable, it's not going to work, and the power grid collapse has just started. Indeed, if we are not careful, it will get to a point that the collapse will last longer than a month, and we will then be in perpetual darkness. The way out is for us to enable private concerns who have the wherewithal. I had some good news some few days back that one man, I'm not going to mention his name, is already thinking about doing something along our axis in the Benin-Jebude axis. So until we begin to, indeed in some parts of the world, even Abeokuta should have his own power grid. Ijebuode should have his own power grid, independent of the national power grid. That is the way to go.
Let me come back to the studio. Chief, you've established that the power grid is not within your purview, but it affects your business, because if there's this incessant power grid, if there's no power, if there's no generation, there's no way you can distribute. And I want to believe that there is this collaborative efforts, GENCOs, CCN that transmits, and you, DISCOs that distributes. So, well, what could you say is the cause of this incessant power grid collapse? And Mr. Adebanjo has also established that. What about the possibility of decentralizing the power grid?
I agree with Mr. Adebanjo. I also believe that it's not just about power. Many things need to be decentralized for this country to work. I lived in the UK for over 30 years, and with my experience in this same sector over there, I know that if you live in, when I was a law student in London, it was a national, it was still a government corporation. We had what was then known as LEB, London Electricity Board. So that's the distributor of electricity for the whole of England and Wales. But later they privatized. I used to live in a town called Maidstone in Kent, which is southeast of England, towards the coast. Yet, I signed up to Scottish Power, which is a disco up north in Scotland. Just with a phone call from Abeokuta, you can say, I don't want to use IBDC, I will now be using ULA electricity. Nobody comes to your house, no wire is touched, nothing is done, just a phone call. With a switch of the button, everything you use comes from there, and then they have a way of setting off. Again, technology, a country that have data where they know how many people are in the country, how many customers they have. We don't know how many customers we have. Well, we have people building every day, go to Bodeolude and some other locations. They connect illegally through their back door, and a lot of things happen. No addresses, you get to some areas, number 1, number 2, some mushroom estates, you can't even do proper enumeration. So that is that. Then talking about the causes of grid collapse. Number 1, Nigeria has a very dilapidated national grid. A grid that has suffered many years of underinvestment and neglect. Then the national grid of Nigeria is radial in nature, unlike England and other climes. Radial in the sense that it goes straight, one line, no loop, no flexibility. So if you are traveling, assuming we're talking of a superhighway, it should be looked at like a superhighway. If you are traveling along the big expressway and there's an accident in front, say Lagos to Ibadan, assuming it's 10 lanes, and you're coming from Lagos going towards Ibadan, and you get to Mowe, there's an accident in front, there should be a bypass. There should be a place where you can turn off, and then you come out from the front. That is a flexible kind of arrangement. But in Nigeria, it's just a single grid that goes radial. That's a problem. The other problem is that the national grid itself, once there's shortage of gas, that means there will not be enough generation. That low generation will weaken the grid, and then the grid will eventually collapse. So all this, again, goes to the issue of investment, regulatory framework, and the way we run our things. The so-called Nigerian factor, which I believe is a negative factor.
Okay, we'll still take you on, but I want to take on Mr. Adebanjo now. You were talking before we took on Chief Oduton here, you were talking about privatization. And I remember vividly, we started with ECN, or before ECN we had ECN, after ECN we had National Electric Power Authority, and then they now said they wanted to unbundle NEPA. They gave us PHCN. After PHCN, again, what exactly is now privatization? Is it not what you are having with DISCOs, with the GENCOs? Is it not privatization? Or what exactly, how is it going to be better than what we're having?
No, it's because I don't think we have enough political will. Why has the privatization of the telecommunication sector worked? Okay. Time was when you have to queue at night to even make a call, not talking of getting a telephone line. If the people at the commanding heights of political power in Nigeria want the power sector to work, it will work. You provide, government has no business in business. You provide the enable environment for the off-takers in the sector and ensure that those privatizations succeed. As we are talking to you now, people who have put their money in the sector are being shortchanged. That is why banks that are giving people money to invest are taking over the control, because privatization of the power sector has not worked. Why has the privatization in the telecommunication sector almost seamless? So we cannot continue to do things in the old way and expect any new result. Nigerians are in perpetual darkness, and it is affecting a whole lot of things. What we want is power. We do not want rhetoric. What is coming from the drivers of the sector? For instance, if you say power distributors, it is what is available that they will distribute. I'm talking of the DISCOs. If you say GENCOs, GENCO cannot generate out of nothing. Structures must be put in place to allow GENCOs to generate. But we have so many things that the government has put in place, so many committees, but we are not seeing value. Nigerians are not getting power. In some areas, the transformer that has been used in the last 20 years is still the same. The transformer that served a community of 25 households is the same transformer that is serving a community that has grown to about 500 households. How do you expect to stand power under that circumstance? We're saying that it's not about changing names, it's about giving value and ensuring that it works. Privatize in such a way that the people will get value for their money. And even from what we now know, Nigerians are ready to pay for power if they get it as at when due.
All right, now I'd like to come to Chief Oduto here, and that's the fact that, okay, he was talking about privatization. A lot of money has been pumped into all this entire process. First, it was $16 billion, you know. Exactly what were these monies used for? Even when it was going to be unbundled again, and then you're going to have Gencos, Discos, and all of that, a lot of money is being spent, keeps being spent, and you are asking yourself, okay, what exactly is wrong? You know, what much, I'm not even too sure the much money that was put in telecommunications sector, we've not even overshot it, you know, or we're very close to, you know, what funds have been put in. So what exactly, I wouldn't want to believe funding is the problem, or what exactly is the problem, and then you now find out that AMCON, it looks like AMCON has taken over some of these discos now. So what exactly, where is the problem?
Thank you very much. Let me first of all clear the air that the telecom sector is a completely different ball game when you compare with the power sector.
Okay.
The telecom sector is simply a technology whereby you bring your machine, put it somewhere, get it connected, air to air from your phone. If you remember in those days of Nitel, they have to pass wires through your house for you to make phone call. And in those days, go and look at, if you remember the Nitel poles and wires, a similar problem that you find in today's power sector, the network, the way it was. So it is very, very difficult. It's very, very different, okay? But that is not to say that this is where we're supposed to be. This is, we are supposed to be far, far, far ahead of where we are now. But we're where we are because, one, privatization that we're talking about, Genco is not 100% private. Okay. Transmission in the middle is 100% government. Disco is 60% private, 40% government. So we still running together with the government. Every disco you see, there is a government director represented by the PP on the board, which means that we're on the board of, we're on the board, a company board of directors, and we take all the critical decisions together. So whatever happens there, good or bad, we have to share the blame together. And talking about AMCON or federal government or using banks to take over, what happened recently was indeed an action that did not follow due process. And those are the kind of things that scare investors away from Nigeria. And let me say very clearly that when the privatization was to occur, the plan was not to sell those entities to local investors. The plan was to sell to foreign investors. Nigerian government went to South Africa, London, Dubai, New York, everywhere, Tokyo, looking for investors. But what did the investors say? The white men, they said, sorry, one, Nigeria was still a corrupt country. Number two, they said Nigerian government does not, from their records, from what they've seen in the past, that Nigerian government does not respect the standards of contract. Number three, they said Nigerian government lacked the commitment to ensure the implementation of a cost-reflective tariff. That is to say, the product I'm buying into, there has to be a landing cost, and everybody should know the cost. Once you know the cost, that will determine the selling price. Not that the landing cost is 100 naira, and you force the distributor to be selling at 60 naira, and nobody's coming up with the 40 naira. Within a short period, they will start to cut corners. That's why you see people contributing money to fix their transformer. People are contributing money to buy poles. That is not a normal thing. That's not the way we would like it to be. But because the government is so inconsistent, because there are policy somersaults along the line, and the good thing about Nigeria, it's not more about one government or the other. Mr. Jonathan privatized, and he did a very terrible job. 2013, Mr. Buhari took over. Nothing has changed because certain people in government, in some agencies, they just sit down somewhere, look for a self-serving way of doing things. And until we begin to do things the normal way, until we look at Nigeria, let me give you another example, just to buttress what Mr. Adebanjo said. I won't mention the state or the government, but I'll just tell you that in 2001, from 2001 to 2002, one state government in Nigeria attempted to generate power, and they brought to the country a company from America known as Aeon Power. Fantastic company with track record, and then they put down this thing to do. What happened? The federal government, then headed by another person who is of the same tribe as the governor of that state that was trying to provide power, scuttled it, destroyed it, stopped it. Why? State has no right to generate power. You can't do it. It's a federal thing. That's what is killing Nigeria. When the same people now come forward and say, we spend 60 trillion, we spend so billion on power, people should be asking, what was the money used for? If I approve a budget or I ask you to spend money to buy cameras in this studio, and I remember Baba Onabanjo, may his soul rest in peace, I witnessed that in Abeokuta. Chief Onabanjo used to go to England for medical checkup, and later the person that was attending, so he used to go to somewhere to buy equipment for OGTV. That time in Kent, the guy later became my own neighbor years after. And he told me about that wonderful person who was a governor in Nigeria. He will buy the equipment, he will ask them, he will ask the GM of OGTV, what do you need? They give him a list. He will get to England, after his medical, he will go and buy those things. I will bring it as part of his own luggage and take it to OGTV, who will now tamper with the cameras. The government already knew how many they have. So if you spend money on the power sector, I expect that you will have tracked it. But when you spend money in a system that we have where even part of the money will be used to fund certain campaigns and so on and so forth, that's part of the problem. But it's not about even blaming people. It's about us now looking for solution. How do we fix things? Why can we continue to do, like Mr. Adebanjo rightly said, we cannot continue to do things the old way and expect a different result. I think the government needs to sit down and do the proper thing. What they did, the so-called takeover, was a kind of renationalization through the back door. And they did that because they knew that if they followed due process, they will end up having to pay those people what they are owing them. Because those investors 3 times in the past have filed for force majeure, which is saying that we cannot run this system again, give me my money, let me go. But now, even if you take over those things forcibly as they've done, one of the discos, Benin Disco, went to court, got a court order that was disregarded. Doors were broken at Benin 2 weeks ago. We cannot continue with that kind of impunity. That is part of the reason why there's no electricity. You cannot do things that will scare away investors. But the purpose of investment is for you to get return for your investment. And when you cannot get return on your investment, you would not want to go near that. So that's the problem.
Well, hi, Chief. But it appears the bank, I don't want to mention it now, that Discos borrowed from in 2013. Well, Discos have been unable to repay these loans, and the bank has now exercised its rights to take over the 5 Discos.
The bank have not exercised any right on their own. Okay? What happened was an action by the government using the CBN governor to the bank. But that is not even the issue. The issue is this. I mentioned the issue of cost element earlier when I said if you invest in any system, or if you are producing any product, if you are a baker and you are producing bread, there's a cost of production, there's a landing cost. If you are asked by law to be underselling that same product and there's no subsidy, what it means that if you are getting it, that product on credit, from the producer. If they give you goods worth 100,000 naira, and you're only able to collect 30,000 naira, the person selling to you will expect you to pay 100,000 naira. And indeed, you should pay 100,000 naira. But it is impossible for you to pay 100,000 naira because that product, you have to sell it for 30,000 naira. That's number one problem. So even if you borrow or you owe, you continue to owe because what you'll be remitting will still be less than what you should be remitting because you are not making up to what will make up for the cost of what you took from the producer. So the mismatch, the misalignment is a problem. And where there is no collaborative effort, where everybody do their own thing, and I call it the so-called Nigerian Factor, because you cannot do anything successfully in any value chain if there's no collaborative effort, if there's no alignment, and if you have regulators who do a lot of policy somersault all the time, and one person will come today, do one thing, another person take over, they'll change it and do another thing. These are the problems with the
I want to take on Mr. Adebanjo here now, and when he's talking about the fact that, okay, we've been they've been operating below expectation and all of that. But you also know that even with the discos and all of that, what discos do is gesticulation. It's not as if, most homes don't have prepaid meters. So, for example, there's been no lights now when we've had this collapse substantially, and then they will still go back homes expecting them to pay the same amount that they know they did not supply, electricity they did not supply. That's how the trend has been until maybe this administration came and is now trying to make people get their prepaid meters, and still you are saying they are not operating, they are at optimal level. Are they not ripping off Nigerians? What exactly, is the problem? I'm sure Mr. Chief Oduto is laughing now. He's looking at me. I'm sure he has something to say. But Mr. Adebanjo, the question is, PHCN, NEPA, and all of that, now we have discos, we have GENCOs, we have all of these names, and Nigerians don't even know which one. The question is, you want us to pay for electricity that you did not supply. Well, thank God for those who have prepaid meters. You don't give them prepaid meters. You want them to continue to pay, and still you are saying you've increased tariff, God knows how many number of times. What amount people pay for electricity now, the tariff has increased So where is the problem? Don't you think the discos also have a problem? Is there not a wuru somewhere, something, something not neat?
Basically, we're just dancing around in circles. We're dancing around in circles, and the takeover of the discos by financial experts will bring disaster. These are not experts in power distribution. They are just experts in financial matters. We seem to be going from one dark alley to another. If you can see, I've just changed my sitting position because I needed natural light, because my light has just been taken by those who should be giving me light regularly. I have to now open the window so that you can see me a little bit better. So invariably, we are compounding an already bad situation by allowing financial experts to take over things they don't have any clue about. There's a difference between power distribution and financial matters. There's a difference between power generation and power distribution. So we are getting everything wrong. The way out, like I said at the beginning, I don't think that, the expert there has talked about the difference between the telecommunication sector and the power sector. However, if privatization works for the telecommunication sector, I hold and I believe that it can work for the power sector. And from where I started off from, over-centralization, for instance.
Back to you, Chief. Now that power generation has been moved from exclusive lists to concurrent lists, is that a game changer, or do you see an end in sight to this irregular power supply? What would that change? No, you cited an example
No,
earlier.
no, Moses, just a minute. I think Mr. Adebanjo is back now. Let's take your last thoughts, your last lines on this.
My final take is that states should be allowed to generate their own power. Like he said, if you generate enough power, there are enough off-takers. The discos are ready. And then the discos should also do the needful.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
No, so back to my question, because earlier you talked about
By ensuring that the problem is that the distribution configuration that was used in the 60s, in the 70s are still in place. So even if you are generating enough light and you cannot distribute because of absolute equipment, then we are not going to go anywhere. Let us ensure that those who have the expertise and private individuals who have the wherewithal come to the sector and they are backed by government, and then we can then start from there.
Okay, hi Chief. Earlier you talked about how the efforts from the particular state governments at generating power was curtailed, because then power generation was on the exclusive list. Now that it has been moved to the concurrent list, that seems like a decentralization somewhat.
Yes. It's a step in the right direction, but it's too little. I won't say too late. However, all of this still come down to the same issue of the business environment, ensuring that those who come to invest in the sector are also able to get a return on their investment. So if you don't create the enabling environment, you can make law. Nigeria is a country which, I'm a lawyer, and I know that Nigeria has extant laws on almost every single issue. But crimes continue to be committed, cases can spend years in court, and so on and so forth. So it's a systemic issue. So what we're saying is that, yes, let the law allow this to happen, but also ensure that implementation is also very critical, and do everything not to scare away investors, because people that want to put their money in any business should not be shortchanged, as the investors in the power sector were shortchanged in 2013, because everything that the government promised to do, that they signed up to, they reneged, and that was Mr. Jonathan's government.
Okay.
And our new government came in, and they kind of pretended as if we can just leave it to continue like that, and that's why you find this error. For me, we have all failed. So it's not about saying this goes because we are distributor, so we have no share of the blame. There are three groups that are guilty of lack of electricity in Nigeria. Number one group, corporate, is Nigerian government, federal, state, and local government. I used to come to Ogun State when I was the chief legal advisor and company secretary of IBDC.
Okay.
And Kemi Adeosun, my friend, was then commissioner for finance. I used to come to Ogun State every 2 weeks to collect money from paid bill of the Ogun State Water Corporation from the governor of Ogun. And he paid. I kept on coming, 60 million. You see, when we have people who are always ready to pay, then things will get better. They did well that time in paying their bills when Kemi was commissioner here. And you have Alamala and other cantonment, Ikeja cantonment are there. They don't pay their bills. We have billions of unpaid bills by ministry, departments, and
Please hold your thoughts. We'll come back to you. Mr. Adebanjo, lastly, I also want your reaction on that particular question, the movement of power generation from exclusive list to concurrent list. Is that a game changer?
We hope that it will not remain a paper tiger. Like the experts, I call him expert because he's been in the field for a long time. If you make a law and you do, and there's no political will to make it happen, it will be like what?
Okay, we will want to continue, but let's just bring this to a close now. Chief Oduto, the picture you are projecting now, you, Mr. Adebanjo, and it doesn't look like we're likely going to have 24-hour power generation within the next few years, this picture that we have all projected, how can we get out of it? I remember when Chief Bola Ige of blessed memory was made Minister of Power in 1999, he told us by 2001 we're going to have electricity, and it was removed. It didn't. Then we began to just have one after the other, one after the other, and then I remember even the former Commissioner for Works, the former Lagos State Governor, the Honorable Commissioner for Works now, said at the time that any government that does not solve nothing in 6 months, doesn't know what it's doing. Now it's over 6 months, it's almost 7 years. Are we going to go on like this?
My only reaction is that there is hope. I'm an incredible optimist, a believer that Nigerian project can work. But you see, talk is cheap. It can work only if we all want it to work. Okay. I mentioned earlier, I said there are 3 groups that are responsible for lack of electricity. Okay. Number 1 group is government, I've mentioned that. Second group are the operators, we, the operators. Okay. Generation company, transmission company, distribution company. Number 3, the 3 of us here, we Nigerians.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, all of us. I will explain. Number 1, I want to believe that both of you here on this program, you are good Nigerians, with good conscience, you pay your bill, you don't, but in each of your streets where you live, and I know where you live, in each of your streets, there are people who continue to steal energy. But Nigerian orientation is that it's not my business. But it's our business, because every time they steal energy in your neighborhood, you are paying for the guy, those guys. Okay. So all of us need to come together, collaborate to ensure that the system works. In England, any little crime, if anything is going on anywhere, you see an old woman or old man or a young man picking up the phone and calling the police. Because the police cannot be everywhere. Okay. They're able to solve crimes in those crimes because the citizens come together to flush out crime. Now, lastly, while we are not efficient enough, we are not doing fantastically well, these schools. If you know how efficient we are, please travel to Lagos State, go to a place called Magodo Estate, try to visit a place called Shonibari Estate, and visit the Ikeja GRA. Those people there, they are paying the true cost of electricity, premium service, and we give them 24-hour electricity. How did we do it? How come we have not been able to do that for Bodeolude? How come we are not doing that for Trans-Amadi in River State? How come are we not doing that for Yanya in FCT? That shows you that, and you mentioned increment in tariff. Those increments has happened like that repeatedly because ab initio, they put it where it was not even supposed to be in the first place. We should not be political about electricity. We should be open to Nigerians, let them know.
Okay.
The government needs a lot of work
we just have to bring everything to a close now, where unfortunately we would have loved to continue this discussion because the grid collapse affects virtually every one of us, and from what we are seeing, it doesn't look like we can say Uhuru yet. It's not yet Uhuru, but we keep hope alive. We keep that one day we're going to have 24-hour power supply uninterrupted. Chief Oduton, we want to thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank you.
We hope your agency or whatever, if this goes with, we have mercy on Nigerians, especially those ones that don't have their meters. Let them, so enough of guesstimation, let them pay for the electricity that they use. And of course, they will also reciprocate. And don't let's just do it for Ikeja alone. Let's do it for Bodeolude. Let's see how it's going to work. And let's keep hope alive that it's going to be better. And government, I hope is listening. Every other area that needs to be done, let all hands be on deck. And let's take it, even if a state of emergency is declared on this, I think it would have. But that's about all we'll be able to take now on incessant grid collapse. We'll go on a break. When we come back, we're going to look at another issue. Stay with us.